Good morning. This morning's devotion is from John 14, verse 1. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Believe also in me. Before we delve into this verse, it should be noted that depending on the translation you're reading, you will either read believe or trust. At first blush, you might think these are different concepts, especially because of the weight Christians place on the word believe. I have no trouble interchanging believe and trust in this verse, however, for the context makes the words synonyms. This is where Jesus tells the disciples he is going to prepare a place for them, and that there are many rooms in his Father's house. This is the classic "there's room for everyone in heaven" verse. It's also, sadly, a necessary statement from Jesus to the disciples because it is also the very same time he had to ask them if, having been with him for so long, they still don't recognize who he is. And no, they still didn't understand the depth of what it meant. So they are reacting very negatively to the news that Jesus will be betrayed and must suffer and die. Have you ever been apprised of an event and thought you understood what you'd been told, only to live through it and find yourself surprised by the very events you were told were going to take place? In my own case, I simply did not understand the magnitude of the effects of the event that was unfolding. I understood the transformation at work and the new main software program would be taking for this, but what I didn't understand was that there were so many other routines and processes that would be turned on their ears from instituting a new software. For one, the type of reports that were generated for the finance committee were totally different. That meant that for 5 years, they were used to reading reports in a specific format and receiving specific information. The new software gave us different output measures, and the old reporting format simply could not work with the new measures. The whole committee had to learn a new way to see our status. The disciples had heard Jesus tell them what was going to happen in a variety of ways: parables, hyperbole, foreshadowing, and explicit detail of the course of the 3 years of Jesus' ministry that they lived through. Yet when he brings the whole story together at that last meal, the disciples were surprised, upset, and very troubled that the end would be anything like Jesus had just told them. So, yes, they were very troubled. It is here that we find Jesus no longer trying to tell them how to understand the story, but to stop worrying about the outcome. This is the real problem that Jesus is addressing here. Not understanding, but confidence in the storyteller and the story maker. This is an issue of faith and of understanding who is running the show. The storyboard has been laid out before them, and it is now time to realize the outcome in these scenes is actually under control. Jesus starts with a given for the disciples. After all, they are Jews, one and all. That given is that they all believe in God. Jews have had a very close but tension-filled relationship with God for a very long time, thousands of years. Do you wonder why Jesus had to even point out that they believed in God? Well, let me ask you, do you believe in God? Let's assume you said yes. What does that belief involve? Do you believe God is the creator, the only God, the omnipotent controller of all existence, the one that directs your future? If you answered any or all of these questions with yes, then why do you worry about your job, your bank account, your family safety, your eternal future? Let me guess. Those are all abstract ideas that do not seem to have God's attention at the moment in your life. In other words, you believe, but you don't necessarily understand the interaction between belief and life. This is most probably where the disciples were also. So Jesus prefaces the next request by reminding them of the given, even if that conjures up different concepts for everyone. Believe, or as I mentioned earlier, trust in God. God is advertised, or he is just a concept. It can't be both, and yet we live in this dual reality every day. Jesus says to clear your spiritual mind and realize God is God. Thus, he reminds the disciples that they do believe in God. That means, for Jews, that God controls everything as the omnipotent one. Jesus is moving along this logic line. They believe Jesus is the Son of God. So the next logical step is to believe in his Son. This is the request Jesus is making. Believe, or trust also in me. If you believe these two things, then why would the events of the day trouble you? The story that Jesus will be betrayed and die was already told. Believe or don't believe. Trust or don't trust. But you can't have it both ways. That does, indeed, cause your hearts to be troubled if you try to both believe and not believe. Our faith is not faith if there is never anything to test it. Faith with certainty of fact is not faith, but fact. Jesus is calling on us all to have faith in that we don't understand or a future we can't see. Follow the path, even if the way is clouded. Treat what you see as what is. If it is the path God has set for you, do not fear to tread where you cannot see. Believe. Trust. Let us pray. Father God, in these times when it is really hard to separate our immediate lives from our future, help us to believe and to trust. Amen.